You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Lohman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Lohman.
Hey everybody, welcome to the House of Sunny podcast on this New Year's Day. Happy New Year, Doug.
Well, Happy New Year to you too.
This is our 81st episode. I didn't say last time, but 80 episodes.
Hey.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
And I think we're in a groove. We're in a flow. I'm liking it. And so I'm thinking for 2020, we should disrupt it. So we'll talk about that. And then, but anyway, everybody out there, today's show, we're going to do like a recap of the last decade, some predictions for the next decade, and maybe at the end there talk about some of our resolutions or just resolutions in general. And that's when I'll talk about the podcast and just kind of where I'd like to see it go in 2020. So anyway, let's get started with a recap of 2020 or the last decade. A lot has happened.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, that was, okay, so Obama's elected in 2008, and in 2010, we have this big Tea Party movement. If we're just talking politics, but even culturally, big Tea Party movement, Obamacare is implemented. That's been a serious problem. A lot of people are having massive problems with medical care, health care, insurance and stuff. It's costing us a huge amount of money, and we're being pushed into single payer now, so that's the trajectory there. But a lot has happened. So the question is, what does it all mean? Right?
What does it all mean?
And where are we going?
By the way, your disruption reference, I like the fact that this concept of disruption is always considered to be positive from like the Silicon Valley type.
Yeah,
like
let's disrupt
sometimes
the
disruption,
market.
Like, why is that always a good thing?
It's
like
not.
It's horrible.
Sometimes
and
it
I
is
just
horrible.
disrupted the podcast with this talk about disruption.
Well, but that's true though. And even like here we are, we've spent 80 podcasts kind of perfecting a certain format.
Perfecting.
We're pretty great.
We're perfect. We're perfect.
No, we're pretty great. I mean, when I listen to it, I feel like the pacing is good. You and I are just, I think like any hosts would need some time to get to know each other in that way and get that hour down where it's really kind of flowing. And
a friend of mine said that, by the way.
What?
He said, you guys are way better now than when you started. It's like gotten pretty.
Part of that is I'm on fewer drugs. And part of that is practice. I was on so much
I'm on more drugs.
That first year I was on so much prednisone, like I don't know, a lot of people haven't been on it, but 60 milligrams sometimes. And that is such a huge amount of pred that I wouldn't even go to the grocery store, but I would do the podcast. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure I was half out of my mind and unable to like keep track anything, which is what like is required for leading a podcast. But no, we're in a flow, and there's definitely a danger to saying, hey, let's make it better. Let's do XYZ. Wait a sec. Like it's already, like it's good. Maybe try to just do that more or something.
Don't disrupt it.
Maybe we shouldn't disrupt it. We'll talk about it. And I'd like to hear from our listeners too, which we have a lot. I'm really pleased actually with how our audience has grown. We have a really good audience. It's grown consistently. We don't like, I've just been doing this because I'm not doing video and it's this kind of side thing. And I don't market it, and my health is still bad, so I'm not ambitious about it. And some weeks it's all I can do to just get it done. And we don't have a producer anymore, so it's kind of, more work than I'd like this year. But and yet, where was I going with this?
I don't know. But anyways,
What the hell was I saying?
You were talking about how perfect you are and how you flow really well.
That's right.
And
I'm in the flow. How I'm not on drugs. How I can think and concentrate clearly, and keep track of everything.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly where you were going with that.
I don't know what I was saying, but
this is all performance art, by the way.
Right.
It's
Tricked ya.
iron.
Tricked ya.
So you were in 2010.
Yeah.
And
Tea
so
Party.
Yeah, the Tea Party thing. Think of how different that world was, because at that time, you've got, really that Obama united the right in a way, I think in a more libertarian way, because he was so, at that time, he was, and now he would probably be a conservative Democrat.
Isn't that hilarious?
But at that time, he represented this nascent kind of new left type, like the cool, hip left, coming into power. And, he was basically for socialized medicine, and he wanted a bigger government role and everything. And, we saw
it was more than that. Like his anti-Americanism oozed out of every pore.
Yes, good point.
And so I think that really motivated those of us who love our country.
He wasn't just a Democrat in the traditional sense of, I want some more welfare or something. He was apologizing to foreign leaders for America and bowing to dictators, and just like he was on this apology
and remember
tour.
when he would take sides in like local police shit? He would always take the side of like the black person, the criminal, regardless. No evidence is in. Nothing has happened.
Yeah, immediately side with the...
Yeah, he would take a side. The president of the United States taking a side in a local police matter.
Yes.
Do you remember the beer summit? And like some guy who turned out to be a professor was trying to get into his house, and a local cop kind of questioned him, and then Obama was like, that's racism, and
let's have a beer and talk about it.
And then it turned out that he was wrong, that it was racism. And then he's like, okay, let's have a beer and talk about it at the beer summit.
But then he ended up just playing golf a lot and really kind of going off to, it was clear that he wasn't really in control. He was a figurehead. He was a symbol that people latched onto. He also represented, in my view, a kind of messianic figure for the left, where it showed us how deeply immersed and wanting they were of this kind of messianic government. And that always scared me, because people were fainting when he would go to rallies. Like
people were doing that when he was running, and that really creeped me out. I remember that being a big reason why I was kind of afraid of him.
Yeah, people were projecting all these qualities onto him. Remember, he won the Nobel Prize before he was even president.
Yeah, and his posters were so communist, like they were so cult of personality, communist dictator style, and it was so creepy.
And he had those Bill Ayers, like communist connections in his past,
and his racist priest or whatever, the church he went to, where the guy's like a total
Reverend
white hater.
Wright, Pastor Wright, And he was at that time, he was a real scary figure, and he represented a lot of bad trends. I don't think he particularly, like if you really went and talked to him about what he wanted to do and everything, I don't think he was as bad as we probably thought he was in hindsight, but he represented, and
like you said, there was a machine around him. It wasn't just like he's golfing, but he had a hard left machine around him, and probably has for most of his life. And that's the machine that took control. And also, I think what we've learned with Trump is that the president isn't as powerful as we thought he was.
Right.
That this bureaucracy is really in control of our country.
And they were in control of his presidency, of Obama's presidency,
even Obama's,
certainly. And, you had this deep state run amok. Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State.
Obama wanted to pull out of Afghanistan.
Right. And all of a sudden, Hillary Clinton becomes Secretary of State. The next thing you know, the Clinton Foundation has raised $2 billion, and she's selling our foreign policy to, dictators and raising money all over the place. And there's all this deep state corruption. And, he's fine with that because he represents the messianic central planner who's got everything in control, and he's going to run your life. And Michelle Obama's telling our kids what to eat for student lunches. Remember that one? But she was all about student lunch.
So what you're saying is this united the right.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. True.
And that was the Tea Party thing where we were like, and he wanted to remember cash for clunkers.
Yeah.
He was overtly in favor of like massive government spending. And
like Bush, then the major bailouts that happened right at the end of Bush and at the beginning of Obama, the TARP stuff. Oh.
Right. Which the Republicans were certainly on board for, but he seemed to enjoy it. He wanted this.
And this we do it reluctantly, but he likes it.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I'm starting to see that there's really a divide on the right, that there's this.
Oh, absolutely.
That there are big government. I mean, I knew this before. There are big government Republicans, and McCain and Romney and these guys, like they don't really have the same values.
That's right.
They have the same values as the Democrats.
Well, you're jumping ahead to the Trump era because I think that's what the Trump era exposed. But
I think
this
Bush
point
exposed
in time,
that to some degree. I mean, his presidency was chock
no
full
doubt.
of. I remember I spoke at a Tea Party, and I said I had some jokes. I had some anti-Bush jokes. Like here I am talking to people who are holding signs about low taxes and don't tread on me. And I had all these Bush jokes about how he sucked,
Yeah.
Like the crappy stuff he did. And they basically booed me. So they weren't ready to face that yet. I think most of them have faced it now. But at the time, they weren't ready to face that.
Yeah, because Bush represented, remember he was the creator of this national security state after 9/11 with the Patriot Act and the NDAA.
Well, the winning the hearts and minds bullshit, the TSA.
That was neocon. That was neoconservatism.
Yeah,
which is
his
what
massive
I didn't
corporate
fully understand
bailouts,
that.
the prescription drug benefit. On and on. Like everything he did was awful. And the only difference between him and Obama was that I think that he likes America. And I think he was sort of like, well, we're doing what's right for the country. I just don't think he had the right ideas about what was right. Whereas Obama, I think, is more of a nihilist and does think that America is evil. I mean, it's the typical sort of intellectual versus a, average American.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and that symbology, is that a word? Symbolism is actually important. I mean, even if
I agree.
Even if two candidates are roughly doing the same things, the fact that like a Reagan, for example, he was kind of doing the same. I mean, he was spending a lot of money and not really reining in big government, but he was such a proud defender of American values that
and the American
that
people.
has a positive. Yeah. And so, but we see this trajectory that Bush, Clinton, Bush, they've got us on this deep state neocon trajectory, and the neocons are guys who want to project American power and American hegemony across the globe and sort of be like a global policeman and spread the American empire, and they're in favor of big defense spending, and they don't care that much what the government does domestically. They're sort of like Democrat lights as far as like spending a lot of money, and they just don't seem to care about that. And Obama was supposed to be a pushback against that deep state neoconservatism, with socialist domestic policy, and he brought socialist domestic policy, but he also continued the deep state neocon stuff with Hillary Clinton as the Secretary of State. So he was kind of the worst of both worlds.
The biggest problem that I see was new in this past decade that came with Obama is the media complete shutout of any criticism, and Hollywood, by the way.
Yeah.
So both of those two legs of our society, which are so critical to freedom, actually, turns out, went full like 100% picked aside.
Yes.
With
Do you
Obama.
remember that reporter asking Obama, essentially said, "How you're so great. What's it like to be so great?" There was like a press conference where he basically said that, and you saw the sycophantic press corps never really questioning him.
And then his remember that rodeo clown got fired for wearing a mask, a mask of Obama, and he'd worn a mask of every president since he'd been doing it, but now we can't do that because it's racist. So that really changed. And also, as a result, too, like that's when comedy changed because you weren't allowed to make fun of Obama and you weren't allowed to. And like SNL used to be every president, didn't matter who, Bill Clinton, whatever, they made fun of every president because you make fun of who's in power. That's what comedians do a lot of times, especially political humor is often an anti-establishment kind of thing. So whoever's in power gets it. And maybe you're harder on the other side than you are on your side, but you still, it never felt one-sided until Obama. And with Obama, it was like, you can't do that. And they literally stopped. There were no jokes. That's when SNL stopped being funny. And then with Trump, they've now, now we can make political jokes again, but
they're not funny.
They're not funny, and they're still not funny, and they don't make fun of their own side very often or very well. They're very, very repressed. And
I remember, I remember in the 80s when Dukakis was running against Bush, it was like that John Lovitz, Dana Carvey type crew, and they had this really funny like Dukakis After Dark sketch, which was a total send up of, this bleeding heart liberal. And they had a guy painting an aircraft carrier that he wanted to turn into a floating shelter for the homeless. And, it was, they definitely went both ways. And then when Obama was in, the joke on Obama was he was so cool.
He was always a straight guy.
He was a straight man. Like, I can't believe these other idiots.
Yeah. He was the straight guy in every sketch. That's how they got him in. That's it. Never make fun of him.
Yeah, so that was scary. I think that was what was,
and the press not covering it was scary, and the press not covering any of the scandals, the Fast and Furious and all that. So that was the decade we lost the press, and not that they weren't biased, but they went all in, and that was the difference.
Yeah,
and same with Hollywood and comedy.
So culturally, you have this real shift starting towards. Like trumpeting the left as a virtue, not like sneaking it in, but like just absolute du jour, we're going all in. We're telling you we're going all in. We're not hiding it anymore. Right. This is it. Hollywood, the press, the universities, everybody was all in for Obama. And, at the same time, the teens to me were all about social media and the rise of social media. And I think there's a bunch of things that happened throughout this period, because
I don't even feel like we can look back and know what that means. The social media piece. I don't think we fully, I think people looking back 25, 30, 40 years from now will be able to be a little bit more obviously you can see more the further you are away. But I think that this social media impact has been greater than we freaking even come close to understanding.
Yes, I do agree with that. I do have a slight take and a reflection on it, in the trajectory it's taken. And I think it integrates a little bit with what's been going on politically. And so, when I started, and I'll just tell you like my own personal experience with social media, which was when I first got onto Facebook around, let's say around that time, the beginning of the decade, I was very excited to like re-engage and like see kind of what all these people had been doing that I hadn't known or seen for 20 years, high school friends, college people, people that I had known throughout the years, whatever. And that was exciting at first. And everyone was sort of excited about that. And you know what I mean? Like, I
was excited about it until the girl who lived down the street from me, who was like a total, broken home, this very overweight, like weird ghetto girl, who taught me how to shoplift. And like, she was so gross and I couldn't get away from her fast enough in life.
She's back in your life.
And then I got a friend request from her. I'm like, oh my God. No, I don't want to know you.
Well, okay. So I'm going to relate this to politics too, because so you understand where I'm going with it, which is you have this amazing technology that allows you to connect to all these people. And over time, you're like, wait a second, I don't really care what that guy thinks about politics. In fact, that guy is positively offensive. Your friends don't like what you're saying. You're starting to argue with people, and you start to realize, I don't need to know 500 people and like what they're doing.
Right.
And we start gravitating back towards what? I just want to be with my friends. So I've gone from like having like this huge sort of network and like following all these people to I'm on a messenger thread with like 4 friends, and I'm on some threads, and I've got my own private rational capital.
Part of it is I believe that it's changed, because when I first got on, it was more pleasant and there was more discussion going on. And I think it was new, and I think there were better people. I mean, we're really talking mostly about Facebook here because we're too old to be on Snapchat and Instagram and stuff. I mean, I'm on Instagram, but it has changed, and you can tell that it's changed when you get your memories. And you can just see how kind of fun and lighthearted everything used to be, and how people would have like long form discussions in a civil manner. And I feel like the people that are left there, or the people that are even bothering to comment anymore, it's just the dregs. And so, yeah, I mean, that's one of my resolutions, is I'm really transforming how I'm going to deal with social media this year. But anyway, societally, it destroyed news because it scooped up it caused clickbait. So we've gone from, I think that's really part of it. It's not just ideological, but the online magazines have figured out how to do headlines, including New York Times. And they know they're going to die if they don't do headlines that cause people to click. Yeah. And so everything's gotten way more hyperbolic. It started out, it was funny, and we used to make fun of it, like, epic destroys so-and-so destroys so-and-so. It's epic. This is so epic. And now they've gotten like much more clever about how they do a headline that scoops you up and targets you and targets outrage, or, including, I don't know if you've noticed, but it used to be when there was a hurricane or something, the news was fairly just sort of straightforward about it. And now you got this 24-hour hurricane, like hurricane watch, and everything is, and then you start getting the memes where the reporter is standing there acting like it's 10 times worse. And then like some people walk by in the background and it's like a normal wind. And that to me is news today. And a lot of that is because of social media. And it's going to be really hard to go back, because Facebook basically crushed all of a lot of new media. And with the censorship and everything, it's a lot of it. Most of it is conservative media. But even companies like, Snopes used to be a fairly healthy company, and now they've become like, I read an article today that they've admitted that some whistleblower came out and said Snopes is getting paid by Facebook. Mm-hmm. And so it's not really an objective source. And they used to be fairly reliable, and then they kind of changed, and they had to in order to make money, because otherwise they were going to die. So,
well, there's definitely an economic incentive that created a drive towards hyperbole and fake news and clickbait and all those things. And then at the same time, I think a lot of it is just a natural human psychological reaction to this new technology, where suddenly you're aware of all these friends. And like you just said, it will take us 40 years to figure this out. But also we're aware of all these friends and what they're doing and what their views are on all these different things. And everybody's now got a voice.
Well, that's the everybody has a voice thing I want to talk about too, because when you're interacting with people in person, you have different thresholds of like who you will entertain views from, or, if you meet somebody and they're weird, like you don't talk to them about anything serious,
Yeah, right.
You kind of dismiss them.
How's your family? What are you doing? What's going on?
You don't take into consideration their views on politics or something serious. But on Facebook, if some weirdo who lives in their mom's basement says, crushes you, you're like upset about it. And
Twitter, he feels more licensed to do that,
and
because
he feels
he's not
more
in your face.
People are ruder.
There's no physical threat.
And then on Twitter, you have the Twitter mob, which could just be a person, like a literal person with no status, who's done nothing. It could be the biggest loser on the planet, and that person can take down an accomplished and respected person. You know, they can get someone like Kevin Hart canceled off the Oscars.
Yes.
So it's really, it's icky. It's
and the human beings evolved to deal with physical face-to-face conflict and conversation. You know, all of our circuitry is wired to be looking at your face while you talk at me and understand lightning quick your facial expressions, your mannerisms, the tone of your voice,
are you a loser?
the volume.
All that is picked up.
Are you fidgeting?
Yeah.
You know, are you scared? Are you nervous? Do you want to change the subject? Like all these like millions of lightning quick calculations you make when you interact with someone personally are completely gone. And there's also, I think Jordan Peterson has talked about this, you know, there's a physical threat. You know, if you're talking to a man on the street or a friend and you really offend him, you have like a physical danger of like getting punched in the face or like really irritating or angering someone. And, you know, that's gone obviously on social media. So there are all these
no consequences.
There were like millions of years of human evolution suddenly out the window, and we're interacting with hundreds of people in this completely non-human way. And I think it took a few years for us to then realize, okay, you know what? I just kind of want to be with my friends again.
I don't think a lot of people have even realized this yet. And when you still have a situation where a Twitter mob of 3 losers can cause like a big corporation to back down or fire a celebrity, or, you know, we're still in this situation where the mob is kind of ruling. And, you know, the question is, and we can say, the question is it going to change in the next decade? I think it has to. It has to, because it's going to destroy our society.
So let me relate this back a little bit to politics. And, you know, we also saw it this decade while this is happening, right? This is the little point I wanted to make because I think it's kind of funny. But we also see the death of the big box stores. And, you know, so in other words, at one time it was like, hey, I can go to a big box store and buy everything. You know, I can go to Walmart or Costco or like one of these kinds of stores or Sears, and I can get an appliance and I can get this and I can get that. And we've started to see the death of this type of retail. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to see, you know, why? Because you can get everything you need online, and you can have more, you know, you can choose, in other words, what you want online. And you don't need to go, someone doesn't have to give you a one-size-fits-all kind of box to go to where you have to uncomfortably interact with like thousands of people and go to a huge parking lot and like figure out, well, maybe they have this stuff, maybe they don't. And so, you know, we see kind of like, I think boutiques are going to be coming back, like more specialty. And so what I'm saying, then we see
so you think the trend is going to be to narrow down to just my small group of friends, just my small community, my local boutiques, my local stores.
Well, yeah, and then look at Brexit. What was Brexit? Brexit was, we don't want to go to the big box store anymore. We don't want people in Brussels, like this big, opaque bureaucracy telling us what we need and what we're going to do. We just want to be with our own people. Like we want our own country back. You know, we want to be Britain again, and we want like we want our friend thread. And so what I'm saying when you think about this broadly is we're all saying we just want to be with our friends. And there was this movement throughout the decades, and it probably peaked sometime in this last decade, where this thought of the Wizard of Oz central planner who was going to tell you what you needed, and everything was going to be decided by a committee somewhere else, and we were going to all live together in this big, happy, multicultural society. And that's a great thing. You know, you have, hey, I've got thousands of friends on Facebook, and we've got millions of different people pouring over the border. And, you know, these people in Washington are going to tell us what to do. And we're going to go to these big stores, and we're all going to be together. And it's like, we're all moving towards
look at all these awesome Chinese things that we can buy so cheap. And isn't it great? Now we're like, take your Chinese shit. I'll make a wooden duck for my daughter for Christmas.
Exactly. Because we've seen where this all leads, and we've gotten so much exposure to the negative sides of it through the implementation of it. It's like, no, you know what? I just want to go to a small store. If I want a boutique thing, I'll just go to like a small little retail shop, or I'll go online. I just want to talk to my friends on Facebook and kind of follow what they're doing, people I like and respect. And I'm only going to be in my little, and some of this is negative too, but in my own echo chamber of people I respect, whose opinions I respect, who I know are, good people. And, and I want my country back. I don't want millions of billions of people from all over the world coming in. I really want my community and my way of life and my culture back. And, this is playing out politically in the Trump era, so it's kind of an interesting confluence of going from the internet and everything opening up the big world, us looking at the world and saying, nah, I kind of like my little community, yeah, that's cool. That's exciting. That was interesting, but it's kind of like going on a vacation where you're like, yeah, that's really great. And then you're there for like 3 or 4 days and you're like, I just kind of want to go home now.
Yeah. Next vacation is a staycation.
Exactly.
We're in the staycation decade.
You're in an airport for 20 hours. There's all these smelly people around you that are disgusting. You're kind of nervous. You're just like, I just want to go home.
Yeah. All right. I like it. Good prediction. Good tie-in. I think that the Tea Party thing, we were listening to some people that we know. We were having a discussion about what Yaron Brook has been saying about the Tea Party, and I don't want to get too far into that, but he kind of said that it basically collapsed and then just became a movement of anger, which is now Trump. And I don't think that's an accurate analysis of what happened.
What a superficial take. I mean, that's so dumb.
Well, I mean, first of all, there are a lot of assumptions there. Like, is anger bad?
Right.
I mean, it's not necessarily bad. Or fear. Yeah. I mean, like you were talking about, you just want to go home. You don't like, it's stressful being out here with smelly people on a train who might rob you. And there's nothing wrong with the sentiment of wanting to sort of go back to a quieter, less stressful existence. And why sneer at people for that? Why is that something? So, and I also just think that it's false that the people who were in the Tea Party, have given up their principles and values. And there was a cartoon that I posted today on my Facebook page for y'all, if you want to see it. But it's a picture of Trump, and he's surrounded by, and it's like the most hated man. He's like white, male, American, like all ticking down all the things. Like, white people are the most hated race, the most hated sex, the most hated country, the most hated this. And then the next frame is Trump's like, I don't care. And I'm like, this is why we picked him. And this is, I didn't actually pick him, but this is why he's the right man for our times, is that we really are the most hated people, the people who want freedom, Americans, white people, unfortunately, and I know the Tea Party is full of lots of people of color, but just, I would even just say just Western people.
Yeah.
People who value Western civilization, even if they only value it implicitly, are the people who are the most hated. And it's billions of people out there, a huge crushing wave that wants to come down on us. And we finally have a guy who just doesn't care. He doesn't feel bad about loving America and being white and being rich and being, and I think that like morally, like from a morale standpoint, we needed that. And so also as license to stand up and start pushing against these people. Obama's in there, right? And 16 happens. So what was your take on that election in 16? Because you've just articulated some of what we look back to in hindsight. Do you think it was as clear when he got elected? I mean, I think emotionally I felt what you just said. Well,
that we needed someone like that. But I didn't see it as clearly as I do now.
I didn't see it as clearly, but the only thing I liked about Trump was that aspect of him. And I thought that was very good and very healthy for our culture. And at minimum, it would motivate, if he sucked and if he wasn't principled and if he was a terrible policy person, at minimum, just that sort of guilt-free, that wall just got 10 feet taller that he said. When he said that to the Mexican president, I was just like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing. Like just defending America and defending our needs. And we're the most powerful country in the world, and we're supposed to be bent over for everybody. And to see somebody not do that was really refreshing. And he not only did that with foreigners, with foreign policy leaders and things like that, but with domestically with the left and this racist and all that crap. He just like, screw you. You're fake news.
Yeah. He didn't take it that seriously.
Or he got mad at it. He doubled down.
Yeah.
Oh, you think that's racist? Here's something for you.
So at the time, though, we had this kind of complacency where you've got the Democrats and Obama, and Hillary Clinton's going to just saunter into the presidency, and she's going to keep this machine and this Washington gravy train going.
Remember who the right was
at
the time? It was Mitt Romney. It was McCain. It was McConnell. It was Paul Ryan. It was Boehner. It was this icky, disgusting, fake, polite, civility in the face of a crushing onslaught of leftism from the Obama administration. And even Bush, because like when he was in office, he was called Hitler. And it was ridiculous, the abuse that was piled on him, and he never defended himself.
Right.
And that was the right. And I think people needed somebody like Trump desperately. And it's not even about his ideas, because what we needed was that. I felt at minimum when he was elected in 2016, I was like, well, at minimum, we're going to get more free speech, because he's going against the PC culture, and he's emboldening people who might be more principled and more intellectual. And that's great, because, I remember by the end of the primary, and let's not forget, by the way, that Ted Cruz was runner-up number 2. So a very principled, a Tea Party guy was number 2 and almost secured the nomination. And I remember when Ted Cruz declared, I thought, well, that's nice, but he'll never get it because he's so radical compared to everybody else. And there was Jeb running and all these dicks,
Yeah.
And yet by the end of it, Trump made him seem like the fake, nice, overly scripted you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, right.
He was not the radical. He was the too tame establishment Republican. Only Trump could do that. So,
but ideologically now, so Trump comes in though, and he represented an anti-establishment populism.
Yeah.
Too, so he's grabbing the Reagan Democrat, the sort of swing voter.
Yeah, that's the other thing people are forgetting. It's like the independents and Democrats voted for Trump. So he's appealing to like the industrial Midwest. Yeah, right.
And some of these people that were disaffected.
With the working class Democrats that walked away and changed parties. He wouldn't have won. So it's not the Tea Partiers really that voted him in. The Tea Partiers wanted Ted Cruz. But then by the time he was the candidate, at least I was motivated to, anybody but Hillary, Jesus Christ. Mostly because she was an overt lawbreaker. And,
yes.
and also because the media, Hollywood, everybody was now in that all-in 100% Democrat space. And that was scary.
The
country needs balance. And so to me, it was no way could, I don't
just
care how
to get
bad
rid
Trump
of her,
is. Yeah,
just to flush them out of the hole, which is what all these scandals have been about, is flushing these deep state operatives out of their holes. And that would probably take another 10 years. But then I think the other interesting thing, I don't know if you agree with this, Sonny, but so originally, we, at that time in the 2010, at the 2016 era, I still thought there was like a big difference between Republicans and Democrats at that time, between the Hillary Clintons and even the Mitt Romneys. Because I remember thinking at the time that, oh man, another 4 years of Obama. I had voted for Mitt Romney, even though now I probably wouldn't. But
I hated that man.
I can't stand him. But he was the typical. He was supposed to be like the pushback against that, right? And now we look back at that and laugh. And so what really ended up happening was we ended up with a Washington versus anti-Washington kind of fault line in politics.
And that is a much better place to be. And I think it's more real. And our goal as people who love liberty is to crush the establishment. It's not just Democrats. Obviously, it's not. So Boehner's gone, Ryan's gone, McConnell's still in there, Romney's in there. We've got a lot of swampy Republicans.
But it's exposed that. And I have to admit, I considered myself a pretty savvy political person. Now I feel really naive because, I thought those people were really different. And now I see them as all one big class. I see Hillary Clinton, Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, all these people as really the same thing. Not even the celebrity
types, but the deep state types, like the people that Trump brought into the White House who then tried to destroy his presidency.
This is the State Department bureaucracy and the foreign policy establishment and the intelligence apparatus and the Defense Department and all these people. Really, all they want is the gravy train to keep running.
Right.
And they want hundreds of military bases all over the world, and they want American presence everywhere. And because that gives them a job and gives them meaning and everything else. And here comes Trump to say, nah, why are we doing NATO? Why do we have all these bases? And he hasn't even been able to change it. But at least he's exposed.
He can't even issue an executive order on immigration. It's just like, whatever. So it's interesting. What I've learned that I didn't know is how little power he actually has and how difficult it is for a president to actually get anything done. Because he's come in with all these goals and he's really not doing that well. And part of it is his immaturity and the immaturity of his staff, and just they didn't really know how to get it done. I'm not sure what influences are going on there, but obviously they want the wall and they can't get it done. And remember, I don't know if you remember, but last year they shut down the government for a month.
Yeah.
And then he was under so much pressure and he just opened it back up and took nothing. He won nothing.
Yeah.
And people are very critical of all this spending and blaming it on Trump. And I just don't see how you can blame him. I mean, on one hand, I would like him to stand up and just not sign the damn thing. But on the other, he can't even do an executive order in an area that he actually has constitutional authority.
Well, this ties back into a couple points. One is that I think, and we've talked about this before, is the need to break up the federal government.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's really so entrenched that we can't end it right now without some sort of secession movement, which I think what, because.
That was my naivety, was just thinking that Obama was more powerful than he really was. And that now I just see the federal government as just this giant octopus. And that, president can motivate and do certain things. And he's certainly a figurehead and he's changed. A president can really change the culture. But I think he'll win in 20. So let's just get to predictions because we're already 45 minutes in. But I think he'll win in 2020. But I don't think that he's going to get that much done. I just don't see him being that effective. I don't know. Like we were just saying, or like you were just saying, we've kind of come to the conclusion that he can't really do much. I think if we could give him a better Congress, he could do more. But
sure,
I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, we're just voting in incumbents. If we don't get rid of McConnell and if we don't have more Ted Cruz's and Rand Paul's in there, it's just going to be the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also want to point out real quick that there are economic forces, and we usually don't talk about this as much, but I think there's some economic forces that are driving this political cycle and will probably lead to Trump's victory as well. And, my prediction, by the way, is that I think Joe Biden will get the nomination for the Democrats because he's the only.
I think, and he'll pick Warren, don't you think?
He's the only person that has a chance to beat Trump in the industrial Midwest, because as creepy and as stupid as we know Joe Biden is, there's a segment of the population there that thinks, oh, he's a reasonable guy. He's a reasonable Democrat, as opposed to, the Bernie Sanders, right. Warren crazies.
Well, and I guess he'll pick Buttigieg or Warren as the.
Yeah, I think he's going to go for Warren probably.
Yeah.
And,
she's more establishment.
I call her America's mother-in-law.
Yeah, she's so icky. Oh,
they're horrible. I mean, but I think, if the economy is perceptually doing well, I think that Trump will win, because I think a lot of people.
And do you think the economy will continue to do well up through next year?
Well, I wanted to get into this give me like 1 minute on this, which is, I think our economy is a house of cards built on cheap fiat money, and it's having effects. And, I could go into this in another couple minutes of detail if you wanted, but it's a house of cards built on cheap money. And there's, to a large extent, that process can continue creating a certain illusion of prosperity. Now, there is actual prosperity, and this is part of what I wanted to get into. When you have inflation and cheap money, it's not so simple, because you have real people doing really great things, and you have people really innovating and, changing the world around us and making our lives better. At the same time, you have a rotten foundation throughout the world. This is happening everywhere. And, to a large extent, the system of inflation and cheap fiat money has been able to continue because we've been able to outsource labor to countries like China and the third world and emerging markets, where they can have cheaper labor costs and keep wages low and take advantage of slave labor. And so there's a large economic analysis that shows us that this is, fiat currency and cheap money and inflation creates an illusion to some extent, and it allows the government to not tax people as much as they otherwise would to pay their bills. And so that's
it is another tax in a way. I mean,
it's an insidious way of funding the government, is what it is.
Yeah, because I've noticed it in what I'm buying. I definitely have noticed inflation, and it's like it's devalued my money by at least half.
But what I'm saying too is there's even deeper effects than just price increases, because you could actually have prices staying flat during this cheap money boom. And let's say we didn't have cheap money. Let's say prices should have gone down and made us all richer because things are cheaper and more plentiful. Just the fact that prices are the same or up a little bit means our standard of living is declining in real terms in a way that we don't see. Whereas if you wanted to raise money and you just go and shake down, you go to someone and put a gun to their head and say, give me your money. No one likes to do that. That's taxation. No politician wants to send the tax man out to get your money. So what they rather do is create the money out of thin air, and it has insidious effects.
So much money. And so
unfathomable, untold amounts of money.
We have to, I do think I saw a poll the other day that people are starting to be like, okay, maybe we need to start diverting our focus to spending.
Well, and what's happening though is because, and again, this is why it's so insidious, is because there's many effects of inflation that we don't see. We don't see how good our standard of living could be. We don't see how much we could afford. It also distorts production.
And it also
predictions,
Doug.
I'm saying it also creates incentives. So I'm saying that to outsource manufacturing. But what I'm saying is the economy can look good for a long time. And people don't understand the insidious effects of inflation. So they're not going to blame anything on Trump. They're going to say, let's just keep going with this. My stocks are going up. Everything's going up. My home price is not going down, and so they're going to vote for Trump as long as the economy's not. I think the economy is going to not look quite as good as it does now to people perceptually, but it'll look good enough for him to win. And I think the other side is so bad that he'll get another 4 years.
Yeah, I think he will too. And what about, do you have any prediction for 2024? It's really hard to predict that politically because I think the left is going to get more left. I don't think they're going to have any kind of awakening where they go, gee, maybe we should pull back, like even like what happened in the UK, you see, the Labour Party just trounced. I don't even think that they are going to reassess and change this insane, selfless multiculturalism that they've embraced over there with the open immigration and the authoritarianism and the EU stuff, the globalism. People don't want that, and they're voting that way. And I don't think the left is gonna change. I don't think they're gonna stop. I think they're too ruled by radical activists.
But I agree with that, but here's why it may not matter. And this gets back into what we said last time, which is I think what happened with the Trump election is there's let's say 20% of the population is hardcore left, like the crazies. And they were so outraged and had such a huge bullhorn on social media that 20% might look like they're half the population to us. And it looks really scary. And they are a large segment. They control the universities and they control the press.
And Hollywood.
Hollywood. And so this minority of people looks to us like it's a huge, suffocating
they're in power.
Wave.
That's why. So the moderates, if they exist, they're irrelevant because they don't push back, and they can't, because if they do, they're canceled or they're fired or whatever. So the people in charge are this 20% or whatever. And you also have droves of voters who aren't on the left in particular, who don't think at all. Like they're literally just sheep and cattle, if they even vote.
Right.
And the left puts so much money into getting the vote out. That's how they get, the numbers that they get.
Well, there's people on the street. They're interviewing people on the street that think Trump's out of office now. Someone asked someone, okay. So, but so my point is that this vocal minority we're going to see in 2020, because I think they're going to have their Mitt Romney moment. Because I think in 2012 I thought, wow, the Tea Party's so big, and we've made so much noise that people are pissed and they hate Obama, and
I see. You think they're in the same mental space as we were in 2012?
Yes, they're outraged.
That we're going to get rid of this asshole and get our guy in there.
When Obama won in 12, pretty convincingly, I went from the stages of where you go when Obama was elected, it was like denial, and then there was a level of acceptance in 12 after Romney lost that I said, okay, I've got 4 more years of Obama. Like, what's really going on here? What? But
the right is more prone to that kind of behavior. That's what I'm saying. I don't think the left is. I think they're not. I think they are going to have a Romney moment, and their response to it is going to be to go into some kind of tailspin, and they may cause a civil war or the secession movement that we're all perfectly fine with. Yeah, California, goodbye, see you later. I live there, so that's kind of sucky for me, but if California secedes, I think it would be better for the country, and they might. And I'm not saying they do it in 2024, but if Trump started enforcing any federal laws, I think in 2024, if Trump wins, they're just going to get more angry and more upset about it. And then they're going to have that. They're going to have that moment where, 2020, they're going to have that moment where, like you said, their Romney moment where they go, oh my God, the people voted for Trump again for another 4 years. That means that I don't understand how big his support is. Like, they might have that flash of insight. And then they're going to say to themselves, well, the only thing I can do is separate from these people.
Yes.
So that could happen. 2024, it's just really hard to say because, but I can tell you that if we ever get another Democrat in power in the White House, we're screwed because the revenge that they're going to take on us, and it's going to be an Ocasio-Cortez type of person.
Yeah, they'll I think some of them are going to have a Romney moment where they'll just say, you know what, maybe our outrage was a little bit over the top and misplaced, and maybe the American people, maybe this guy isn't as bad, and then Trump's going to get more. If he wins again, I think he's going to get more aggressive in his second term because he won't run for obviously can't run for re-election. So he'll probably get a little bit more aggressive with what he's doing. And I think that's going to provoke some, secession-y, outrageous type of leftist movements. And I think in other words, for some, they'll chill. Because remember, this also happened during the first term of Reagan. A lot of people don't remember this, but the left was hysterical when Reagan won in 80.
I don't remember that, but I knew that. Yeah.
There's no social media for them to vent their frustration, but it was real and you could see it. And then when he won his second term, suddenly he became kind of this, he's not so bad. And, people kind of accepted it. And it was people had a different, there's a different culture in his second term. And then a lot of people accepted it, but a lot of people got more radical. And, So
my prediction, though, I mean, it's not the Reagan decade. My prediction is that the left is going to get more left after Trump wins in 2020. And what that means and where that goes for 24, I'm not sure. And then I wanted to make some predictions about entertainment. And I think that we're going to see more conservative fashion and more kind of like differentiating between male and female. The teens have been a real decade of androgyny. And I realize that that's kind of a trend that's continuing. If you go try to buy our Barbie doll, 90% of them, you can't tell if it's a Ken doll or a Barbie. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'm seeing young women dressing in dresses and almost conservative dresses, like Laura Ingalls Wilder type stuff. And that's really interesting. And I'm kind of hoping that people will be influenced by the Roaring 20s and we'll see more real masculine and real feminine kind of fashion.
Like a pushback.
Yeah,
I
think it's a pushback.
Androgyny.
And in movies, I think we're going to see more risk. The last decade has been all sequels and remakes and no risk. And we're kind of like, not to give Harvey Weinstein a shout out here, but we're missing our Miramax. We're missing our indie films. And that, I believe, is starting to grow again. Only the vibe is very dark and mean. It's a backlash against PC, but it's going into places that I don't like. It's not really good film or art. It's kind of creepy. More horror that crosses PC boundaries. Kids love the horror stuff.
Yeah.
And then music, I think, is going to stay similarly like non-melodic. I don't know what the word is. Unmelodic. But it seems to be getting flatter and just more, rhythmic.
Oh, yeah. Popular music is definitely...
I don't see that changing anytime
horrible.
Soon. I don't see any kind of I see a resurgence in fine art, in representational art there. I see a conservative resurgence in fashion. I like the movies are starting to push back on PC. I think there's going to be more underground comedy. Yeah, comedians are really pushing back. Just with Chappelle and, but
I don't
look
think
at Kanye. I mean, I know that he's not melodic, but at least, he did a whole like Christian album. So I do think that there's going to be like a hip hop backlash a little bit, just mostly because of him. I think Black culture, I'm really curious about what they're going to do in the next decade because they just can't keep going on the way they're going. And you can't ignore the facts. I mean, the reality of their culture and the situation has gotten so bad. And I mean, if you ever take a mic or see these cameras go into their communities in Chicago or whatever, the people are begging for help dealing with the violence and the poverty and the lack of family. I mean, they're all just so crushed by it all. And something's got to give. And you're seeing a lot more Black people kind of crossing over and becoming conservative, reconnecting with their Christianity and those values. And I think that's going to grow. I think that's definitely a movement on the rise that is good. It's good for America and it's good for them.
So you're saying the exposure that we've had to the left and to the nihilism and the bankruptcy and the kind of unnaturalness of what they're pushing is so awful that it's going to probably push fashion trends and cultural trends in the opposite direction.
When boys are beating girls in girls' sports,
yes,
like you just can't have that and not have people go, wait a second.
Yeah.
And all it takes is a crack in the wall, and then the whole thing is going to be weak and crumble. And they've done a lot of things. The left has done a lot of things lately that have just really gone too far. I think the trans stuff is way too far. Calling kids who, a young girl who dresses like a boy, which I don't know, half of girls are not girly. Half the girls out there are tomboyish, and it just really is a personality thing. I was a very, very much a tomboy. My daughter is girly, and I'm not pushing that on her. I'm kind of a tomboy. So, but she's girl. It's just different. She's just the way she is. And nobody said at the time, like, I'm wearing my brother's boy shirts, hand-me-downs. No one's saying, oh, maybe she wants to be a boy. And I think the absurdity of that, everybody knows that not only is it absurd, but it's like really evil to intervene in a child's development over like a guess that isn't probably accurate, like an unlikely guess. And then to have these people winning and beating out girls who now have no sports. Like, and suddenly we're supposed to just be fine with that after fighting for decades to get girls equality in sports. It's like everybody knows that's wrong.
Yeah.
And the girls who are experiencing it in school know it's wrong when a boy comes into their locker room. They know that's wrong. And so there will be a backlash. You're going to see people wearing cross necklaces as like a symbol of conservatism. And I'm not buying this nihilism shit of valuing. And I know that I'm not saying they're going to be more religious. I'm saying that it's going to be a symbol of a pushback against the nihilism.
I think as long as we have enough freedom and time for this to be exposed and for people to sit back and like have the emperor has no clothes reaction, like this is craziness. We can't have like guys and girls sports and things like that. I think we'll win out over time and there will be a pushback. I think that's why the left acts so fast, because they overwhelm you with so many things that by the time you push back against the very most radical thing, 17 other things have already been implemented.
Well, but at a certain point, they cause their own destruction with that strategy, because like next when they start to try to get us to accept pedophilia,
which is coming.
Which is coming. They're already doing it. That's coming. I mean, it sounds crazy, but that is coming. It just keeps going on. And at some point, just anybody with any kind of sense of right and wrong in their brain, they're just not going to be able to hold those two things. And the left hopes that when you get to that point, they're in control and they can just shove it down your throat.
Well,
whether
and that's
you
why
like
they
it or
need,
not.
They need big government. They need bureaucracies in faraway places ruling the masses. They need like millions of people pouring across the border, causing crises everywhere. And this is why I think you see Brexit, and it's why you see people pushing back and saying, we want to be with our friends again. We don't want trans people in our bathrooms. We don't want guys and girls sports. We don't want to
hopefully it comes from a place of self-government, which is our heritage. And you can't say that our revolution and the founding of this country was like anti-tariff and pro-free markets. Yes, it was in the sense that England was, and definitely we had a chance to sort of create a government from scratch. But what it was about was governing ourselves.
Yeah. We don't want the king across the ocean telling us what to do.
That spirit is still here. I believe that's what Trump represents. And that's what we want. I think that it's the same instinct of like hunkering down, scaling back. And, I don't want Facebook outraging me every day, I'm going to unfriend all these people and pare it down to 50 or 100 people so that I'm only getting the stuff I want to get. And I'm going to go back to my local politics, and I don't want the federal bureaucracy telling me what to do. I hope that's happening, and I hope that means that maybe we can, if we can't secede, then maybe we can eliminate some of these bureaucracies. But I don't see it happening because I see that with all the problems, like you take something like Obamacare, it's been 10 years since we've had this stupid, destructive law. We all can feel it in our pocketbooks. We can all feel it when we go to the hospitals and doctors. And those of us who are sick, we experience every day how hard it is and how Obamacare has screwed us over. And yet, the real movement in the culture is for single payer. It's not to eliminate all this junk and get back to a free market. People are terrified of a free market.
Yep.
So I don't know.
So now I think, our job, if Trump does win again, and we've kind of beat back this leftist cultural putsch, that's been taking place, then I think we have to go back a little bit more to focus on libertarian economics and free market.
Right.
Because right now I felt like overwhelmed by the leftist cultural stuff.
Right.
And at this point, suddenly we have a $22 trillion deficit. We're spending $4 trillion a year. We've got this house of cards, fiat currency economy. We've got Obamacare, and, Trump's already endorsed, he's basically said, oh, you can't get rid of pre-existing conditions and all that stuff, which means he doesn't believe in private insurance. And no one's even talking about free market solutions in healthcare. But if Republicans really want to win and make our lives better, we got to start focusing on that just as much if we can beat back this leftist craziness.
Right. Yeah. All right. So that's what we're hoping for the next decade. So let's talk about in our last 5 minutes here, resolutions. Did you make any?
Yeah, I did. I think they're kind of personal, as far as
we don't have to talk about the specifics. I have something funny about this. I have like this little journal where I write stuff like this when I need to think something through, and at the end of the year I try to reflect and think about my past year and what I want for the next year and personal goals. And so I pick up that journal and I realized the very last entry was last year at this time. Like I just had no reflection during the year at all. And
well done.
Yeah, thank you. And the entry was, what I said last year was exactly what was on my mind this year. So I'm like, okay, I've basically stagnated. Maybe, or I am just really focused and I have the same goals. No, they're not even like that. They're not goals that take 2 years. Like one of them is to use social media less. And I had this plan and I think I did. I think I took a month.
You've said this to me every month since I've known you. You've said this.
Yeah.
This is it.
I did take a month off. I think I took January off. And last summer, I took a bunch of time off too, and we didn't do the podcast. And so I have taken big breaks, but I need to use it differently personally on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And for me, it seems to be an all or nothing kind of thing. So this year, Scott Adams talks about don't set goals, set systems.
Yeah.
So he says the way to accomplish things is to don't say, I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to get in shape or whatever. You say, I'm going to go to the gym every day at 10. You need a time, you need a place, you need a system.
Yeah.
And then even if you're sick, you get up, you put your shoes on, you go to the gym, and then you turn around and come home. Yeah. Because the goal is to just work the system. And if you do that, so it's not to exercise every day. It's go to the gym at 10 o'clock every day, whether or not you exercise.
Right. It's much more easy.
Yeah. And so, and then you can't talk yourself out of it. Oh, I don't feel like exercising or, Anyway, so for Facebook, I have started unfriending the huge amount of people that I'm friends with on Facebook. And I've been meaning to do that for a while, and it's actually been hard work. I think I've unfriended 300 people, and I really want to unfriend about 1,000 people.
What does that do for you?
It pares down who I'm interacting with and just the amount of stuff I see.
Oh.
So it just makes Facebook less lively, I think, less going on.
Okay.
And it takes out the people that I'm choosing deliberately not to interact with because I don't know them. And it will remove me getting my news there. So it just changes it. It changes what's happening there for me. So that's what I'm going to do. And then...
so instead of saying you're going to get off social media, which is unrealistic, creating kind of a process by which the experience will be better. Right. And a byproduct of that will be you have less stress and less angst over the whole...
Well, and I'll just use it less because there's just it's not as much going on. I mean, when I think about why don't I use Instagram very much, I keep... Like if I go over there and scroll, I see the same 10 pictures over and over, and like it just doesn't change, and so I just move on.
Yeah.
It's just kind of not a lot going on there. So it's easy to just go peek in there and then I made it boring. So I'm going to make Facebook boring. And as in terms of this podcast, I'm going to, in the next month, I promise you guys, I've been saying this for a while. I haven't really been saying this for a while. I didn't really have the energy to do this, but I'm going to get this Subscribestar thing up and running. Really, we left Patreon last January in a huff, and I think it was the right thing to do. I don't regret it. But with that, we lost all of our funding and we lost our producer. And I would, anything I want to do to just expand this podcast, I can't really do because we don't have any money. So I set up Subscribestar, but I did it kind of quickly, and I don't think it seemed like some people donated, but I never got any of the money. And then whatever they set up, it didn't do a monthly thing. It just did a one-time thing. So like 1 month I got $25, which I never got. And then all those people dropped off. So they didn't become subscribers. It was weird. So I think my settings are wrong. And part of the problem is I have a really whacked out website. A friend of mine took it on to fix it for me a couple years ago and screwed it up. And I don't even know how to use my own website. The back end is so insanely screwed up. I don't even know how to post. So I can't go in there and fix anything. I'm just going to create like a bulletin board website and redirect my URLs there so that at least there's a place where people can donate. And they can go to my YouTube channel. Like there's just a few easy buttons, but that'll end up breaking. Well, all the URLs to all my past work are broken anyway. So I'm going to set that up. We'll have a nice website. We'll have Subscribestar figured out. And then I'm going to hit you all up for money. And then we're going to get a producer, and maybe we'll do some more interesting stuff. Like then maybe I can actually do interviews, and we can start having some guests on here and devote more time to other things that I'm now devoting to editing and marketing and things like that I can hire someone else to do. So one of the things I'd love to do, and unfortunately you're in, I would love to move this into a real studio or set up a real home studio where I can have a guest come in and be here in person. But it could also be that I could rent out a studio for an hour every week that's already got all that stuff, and then we could do calls, Yep. I mean, that could be super cool. So I'd like to maybe take calls. I'd like to do interviews. It'd be fun to expand and add some extra things. And like I said, it'll disrupt our flow, and maybe we won't be as good, but...
I have a prediction.
Okay.
Next year, you're going to pull out your New Year's resolutions, and it's going to say exactly what you just said.
No, it won't. It won't.
All right, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah. Anyway.
We're not stagnant.
What do you have to say? Do you have anything to say about your resolutions?
No.
No. Personal.
I'm going to be better.
I
agree with you that you got to form habits, not just, these once a year goals. So, but no, I do have a lot of personal things to be bigger, better, stronger, wiser, all those things, healthier. a lot of it has to do with health. I want to get back to not eating processed, just like living that fast life of just grabbing things. I had an experience recently where I had some like real food that was like sort of very homemade. And I was like, why aren't I doing this all the time?
That's
How
so
in the
funny.
world do I eat all that garbage? That you're just like fast, you got to go eat something, because it does take time to live that lifestyle. And it's a more European approach to eating and health and lifestyle. I would love to
almost
do that.
only eat home cooked. So that's just weird to me. But I'm also not out and about.
Are you home a lot?
I'm home. I'm
Right.
home and sick. My biggest problem is having the energy to cook, but I have a kid, so I make an effort. It sucks, but I actually don't eat out very often, and so that's kind of sad to me that you just got this home cooked meal and it was like, wow, this is good.
Yeah, but it's not just home cooked. It's also the ingredients, like getting real.
Fresh.
Like I met a guy who makes his own cheese.
Yeah.
And I met someone who makes their own bread and from all the stuff from scratch. And it's like you eat that stuff and it's
so
like
good.
entering a different universe.
Yeah.
From what when you go to a typical American supermarket.
The danger is if you start eating that way, you can't go back, dude. I'm telling you, because so when I first started dating Lucia's dad, he ate only organic and like would eat at organic restaurants. He was really into that. And I gave him tons of crap because I'm like an objectivist who thinks science is great and doesn't believe in organic. And, you're such a hippie, blah, blah, blah. So, but I'm dating him. So I'm eating with him. And like a month later, I meet my friend at this diner that I used to always eat at, regularly. And we meet at this diner and I order eggs and they come and I'm like, ugh, I can't eat this.
These aren't free range.
These eggs
chickens.
are like gross. And
like
I've
you
never
could distinguish
got back.
between eggs.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Wow.
The
That's
taste
amazing.
was different. The texture was different. And it was so disgusting. And I thought, wow, the food is actually better. Organic food is fresher. Free range eggs taste better. There's better flavor.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's also a way of engaging more in what's going on locally with people who are producing things, who are more artisans. And I do art as a big part of my life. I actually oil paint and do some other things. And I know a lot of artisan type people who do their own things. And you just start living in that world and, you want more of that world. And again, this is kind of like going home idea that I started with. It's sort of like that's actually a good life.
it is a good life. Yeah. On that note, I think we can end on that note.
Live a good life.
A happy note. Everybody plan a good life for 2020, regardless of what happens politically. But yeah, we do need to be involved and engaged in politics because it's interested in us, right? We have to be interested in it.
It wants you.
It wants you bad, man. It's coming. So yeah, that's it. We'll see you next week, and let us know in the comments what you want us to cover or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Do we have any questions for our audience?
Yeah, we have a ton of questions for our audience.
Maybe we should do a whole show. I have a friend who has this thing called Call-In Studio where we can just get phone calls. Maybe we should do a whole show where we just take calls.
Yeah, I love that. I would love to do that. I think it's good to hear from people what they like us to talk about, because I know that a lot of our interview shows have done really well, and I love having expert guests.
Yeah.
And because of our situation here, with the whole, you described, it's harder for us to have a producer and have guests on a regular basis and all that. But we definitely like to go back to that. But if there's topics or special things, we would like to know about it.
Right now, I'm not there. Every week there's a book that comes out, and I think, oh, that'd be interesting to interview that author.
Yeah, totally. I have a bunch of people.
And I don't think we have the kind of size audience too that we could get decent guests. Like I'm seeing decent guests on podcasts with half the audience we have.
Good. Yeah, we should do it.
So there's no reason why we can't.
Or we can do a book review where we just do a book and just go through it. Yeah, for sure.
There's no reason why we couldn't interview someone like Douglas Murray. That's exciting. if we got into the groove of actually having that be part of our format. So if that interests you guys, let us know in the comments. Like, how do you want to see us take this podcast over the next year? And, how do you like it? What do you wish we did differently? We're really totally open to it, even though we know we're in the flow. Don't disrupt us too bad. Too bad.
Definitely do not disrupt.
All right.
We're going to disrupt ourselves.
Right. Happy New Year, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the House of Sunny podcast. Go check out Sunny on YouTube at her channel, House of Sunny. Everything Sunny does is fan-funded, and because she's likely to get kicked off and demonetized on every platform at some point, please support her over at patreon.com/House of Sunny. Become one of Sunny's elite squad and have access to behind-the-scenes footage, t-shirts, special events, and more.